May the words of my mouth and the meditation of all our hearts be pleasing to you, O Lord, my rock and my redeemer. So in many Episcopal churches, there is an unofficial tradition around Trinity Sunday. It often gets handed to the newest preacher, the deacon, the curate, the assistant. Some say it's like liturgical hazing. Let's see how they handle explaining the Trinity. It's a challenge, and in many ways, a theological puzzle. One God in three persons, Creator, Son, and Holy Spirit, one essence, three expressions, not three gods, not one wearing three hats. But I'm not going to stand here this morning and try to solve the mystery of the Trinity for you. I'm not going to pull out a whiteboard with a triangular diagram or try to convince you that God is like water, ice, and steam. And as much as I love the ancient metaphor of the Trinity as a divine dance, parachoices, that's not where we're going either. Today, I want to take a different approach because I believe that while the Trinity itself is eternal and unshakable, there is a crisis in the Trinity. Or more accurately, a crisis in how we live in relationship to the Trinity. Let me be clear here. The crisis isn't in the doctrine. The crisis is in the disconnect between who God is and how we live. Too often, the Trinity becomes a distant theological concept rather than a pattern for our lives. Too often, we recite the creed on autopilot, proclaiming belief in Creator, Son, and Holy Spirit, while ignoring the call to live in communion with that God. And when we ignore that call, we lose sight of our part as co-creators, as followers of Jesus, as bearers of the Spirit. We forget that we are not just called to believe in the Trinity, we are called to live the Trinity. So let's look at this crisis more closely, one person of the Trinity at a time. The Creator. We say we believe in God, Creator of heaven and earth. But what does it mean to confess belief in the Creator when the creation itself is in crisis? Everywhere we look, the natural world is groaning. The air is polluted, waters are poisoned, species are disappearing. Fires and floods, droughts and rising seas. These aren't abstract problems. They are the symptoms of a world suffering under the weight of human neglect and exploitation. And while climate change is global, its consequences are not shared equally. It's the poor, the vulnerable, the marginalized who bear the brunt of environmental devastation, those who contributed least to the problem and yet suffer the most. To believe in the Creator means more than acknowledging God's handiwork. It means joining in the work of caring for it. It means understanding that we are co-creators, called to tend and guard the earth as stewards, not owners. Genesis says we were given dominion, but that dominion looks like God's dominion. Life-giving, not destructive. Compassionate, not careless. If we honor the Creator, we must also honor creation. Jesus the Son. We say that we believe in Jesus Christ, God incarnate, God in human form, in human flesh, who lived among us, died, and rose again. And when we look at the ministry of Jesus, one theme rises above all: radical love for outsiders. Jesus welcomed the stranger, he touched the untouchable, he healed the broken, dined with sinners, and challenged unjust systems. He consistently centered himself on those on the margins: the poor, the sick, the outcast, the overlooked. He reminded us again and again that every human being bears the image of God. And yet, in our world today, we are failing to see that image in one another. We arrest and deport refugees and asylum seekers. We pass laws that target our LGBTQ plus siblings, especially transgender youth. We underfund schools, cut health care, and shred the safety net, all while justifying it as economic necessity. Empathy is dismissed as weakness. Compassion is ridiculed as naivete. And somehow, we still dare to call this a Christian nation, or to call ourselves Christian. That is not the way of Jesus. Jesus said, "Whatever you did to the least of these, you did to me." If we cannot recognize the image of Christ in the poor, the sick, the hungry, the queer teenager, the undocumented worker, then we are not following Jesus. To believe in Jesus is to take up his cross and walk his way, a way that always leads us toward the marginalized, not away. You may recall that presiding Bishop Sean Rowe recently reminded us that the marginalized are at the center of our message, not at the fringes. When we don't recognize the image of God in one another, we miss the opportunity to build a bridge that spans the world's flaws. The Spirit. We say that we believe in the Holy Spirit, the Lord, the giver of life. The Spirit is God's presence with us now, empowering, guiding, unsettling, breathing new life into old bones. But too often, we ignore the Spirit's voice, or worse, we confuse it with our own. We see it in the rise of Christian nationalism, where faith is used to justify power rather than surrender it, where Jesus is weaponized to uphold the status quo rather than challenge it, where the cross is wrapped in a flag and made into a symbol of conquest rather than redemption. We were given the Spirit to guide us in all truth, not just comfort, but truth. The Spirit calls the church to be bold, prophetic, open to change and challenge. Yet we often prefer safety, silence, and sentimentality. To believe in the Spirit is to be willing to be led, even when it's uncomfortable. It's to trust the Spirit's fire still burns, still disrupts, still transforms. To believe in the Spirit is to desire to become all flame. So yes, there is a crisis in the Trinity, not because God has changed, but because we have forgotten who we are. We've forgotten that our baptismal vows are not just ceremonial, they are covenantal. We've promised to seek and serve Christ in all persons, to strive for justice and peace, to respect the dignity of every human person. We've promised to renounce evil, to turn to Jesus, to follow the Spirit's leading. But we have work to do. So I leave you with 3 questions, Trinitarian questions, if you might say. What are we going to do about this? What are you going to do? When are we going to start? The mystery of the Trinity isn't meant to confuse us. It's meant to shape us. It's meant to transform us. The Trinity is love in relationship, a divine communion that invites us in. And once we are in, we cannot remain unchanged. So today, let us not settle for explaining the Trinity. Let us commit to embodying the Trinity, to walk with the Creator in caring for the earth, to follow Jesus in loving the marginalized, to be led by the Spirit into truth, justice, renewal. And in doing so, may we help heal this crisis and bear witness to the fullness of the Trinity.